When Eva Morales took a job on yet another farm, she didn't expect to be seen, but in the quiet fields of Briarwood, the farm's owner offers her more than just work, he offers her a reason to stay. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun cast golden rays across the wheat fields of Briarwood Acres. Eva Morales wiped the sweat from her brow and adjusted the faded bandana holding back her dark hair. At 26, she had already worked on more farms than she could count. This one, with its endless golden fields, was just another stop on a journey that seemed to have no destination. "Water break," called out the crew leader, a stocky man whose skin had been weathered by years under the sun. The other workers quickly gathered around the water station, laughing and joking with the easy familiarity of people who had known each other for years. Eva hung back, taking her water bottle from her small backpack and finding a spot of shade under a nearby tree. She was used to being alone. It was safer that way. "You're doing good work out there." Eva looked up, startled by the deep voice. Henry Blake stood a few feet away, his worn cowboy hat shading his face. At 30, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the land like the back of his hand. Eva had seen him around the farm since she arrived 2 weeks ago, always watching the workers from a distance, occasionally stopping to help someone who was struggling. "Thank you, Mr. Blake," she said softly, her eyes dropping to the ground. "I try to earn my keep." "Please call me Henry," he said, moving a step closer. "Mr. Blake was my grandfather." Eva nodded but didn't respond. She'd learned long ago that the less you said, the fewer problems you had. People didn't notice you when you were quiet. They didn't remember you, and that's how she preferred it. "You've been working farms for a while, haven't you?" Henry asked, not moving away as she expected him to. "Since I was 16, she answered, surprised by his interest. "I can tell. You have a way with the plants. Not everyone does." Before Eva could respond, the crew leader called everyone back to work. She quickly capped her water bottle and hurried back to the field, feeling Henry's eyes on her as she walked away. That evening, Eva sat alone on the steps outside the workers' bunkhouse. Most of the other seasonal workers had gone into town for drinks and entertainment, but Eva preferred the quiet of the farm. She pulled out a small notebook from her pocket and began to sketch the sunset, the soft colors spreading across the paper. "That's beautiful." Eva jumped, her pencil making an unintended mark across the page. Henry stood at the bottom of the steps, a toolbox in one hand. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," he said, setting down the toolbox. "I came to fix that loose board you all mentioned at breakfast." "Oh," Eva said, closing her notebook. "I can leave if I'm in the way." Henry frowned slightly. "You're not in the way. Never think that." He knelt down and began examining the loose board on the steps. Eva watched him work, noticing the careful way his hands moved, strong but gentle. She should go inside, she thought. Being alone with the farm owner wasn't wise, but something about his presence felt different from other men she'd worked for, less threatening, almost comforting. "Have you always worked on farms?" Henry asked as he pulled out a hammer from his toolbox. Eva hesitated before answering. "Mostly. Sometimes I pick up waitressing jobs in the winter." "And what brings you to Briarwood?" "We're pretty far from everything out here. That's why I came," she admitted softly. "I saw your ad in the paper. Quiet farm, seeking workers, quiet. It sounded good to me." Henry smiled at that, a warm smile that reached his eyes. "Well, you certainly got that. Sometimes I think it's too quiet around here." As he worked on the steps, he asked her about the other farms she'd worked on, listening intently to her brief answers. Eva found herself saying more than she usually would, drawn out by his genuine interest. When he finally finished fixing the step, the sun had set completely, and stars dotted the sky above. "There," he said, standing up and dusting off his jeans. "That should hold now. No more wobbling." "Thank you," Eva said, standing up as well. "It was getting dangerous." "Can't have anyone getting hurt on my watch," Henry replied. He looked at her for a long moment, then added, "Especially not you." The words hung in the air between them. Eva felt her cheeks grow warm, and she was grateful for the darkness that hid her blush. "Well, good night, Eva," Henry said finally, picking up his toolbox. "See you tomorrow." As he walked away, Eva found herself watching him go, wondering why her heart was beating just a little faster than normal. The next few days passed in a blur of hard work under the hot summer sun. Eva noticed that Henry was around more often, checking on the workers, bringing extra water, and occasionally jumping in to help when needed. She tried not to notice how often his eyes found her, or how he always seemed to have a reason to be working near wherever she was assigned. One afternoon, as dark clouds gathered on the horizon, Eva was sent to gather herbs from the small garden behind the main farmhouse. The farm supplied not only wheat but also fresh herbs to local restaurants, and Eva had shown a particular talent for knowing exactly when each plant was ready to be harvested. As she carefully cut sprigs of rosemary, she began to hum softly to herself, a habit she'd developed over years of working alone. The melody was from a song her grandmother used to sing, one of the few good memories from her childhood. "That's a beautiful tune." Eva's hands froze. She turned to see Henry standing a few feet away, a soft smile on his face. "I'm sorry," she said automatically. "I didn't realize anyone was around." Don't apologize, Henry said, moving closer. I like hearing it. You always hum when you think no one's listening. Eva stared at him, surprised. You've heard me before. Henry's smile widened. Every day. When you're picking the wheat. When you're sorting it. Even when you're eating lunch by yourself under that old oak tree. Oh, Eva said, looking down at the herbs in her basket. I didn't know. There's a lot about you I've noticed, Eva, Henry said quietly before she could respond. A loud crack of thunder split the air. Large raindrops began to fall, quickly turning into a downpour. Quick, Henry said, grabbing her hand. The farmhouse is closer than the bunkhouse. Eva hesitated for just a moment before allowing him to lead her toward the shelter of the large white farmhouse. By the time they reached the porch, they were both soaked, water dripping from their clothes onto the wooden boards. Come in, Henry said, opening the door. You can't go back to the bunkhouse in this weather. Eva stepped inside, immediately struck by the warmth and homey feel of the place. It wasn't fancy or modern, but it had a lived-in comfort that made her feel instantly at ease. Let me get you a towel, Henry said. Disappearing down a hallway, Eva stood awkwardly in the entryway, not wanting to drip water on the polished hardwood floor. Henry returned quickly with a large fluffy towel that he handed to her. Thank you, she said, drying her hair and face. I can lend you some dry clothes, Henry offered. I think my sister left some things here last time she visited. They might be a bit big on you, but better than staying in wet clothes. Eva was about to refuse, when a shiver ran through her body. If it's not too much trouble, she said instead. 20 minutes later, Eva sat at Henry's kitchen table wearing a pair of sweatpants that she'd had to roll up several times and a soft flannel shirt that smelled faintly of lavender. Henry had changed as well and was now making hot chocolate on the stove, the rich scent filling the kitchen. My grandfather's recipe, he explained as he poured the thick, dark liquid into 2 mugs. He always said there was nothing better on a rainy day. Eva accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. It smells amazing. Wait till you taste it, Henry said with a wink, sitting down across from her. They sipped in comfortable silence for a few moments, listening to the rain pounding on the roof. Eva couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so safe. It was an unfamiliar feeling, but not an unwelcome one. So, Henry said finally, setting down his mug. Tell me about Eva Morales. The real Eva, not just the quiet worker everyone sees. Eva stiffened slightly. There's not much to tell. I don't believe that, Henry said gently. Everyone has a story. Eva stared into her mug, watching the steam rise. Mine isn't very interesting. Or happy. I'd still like to hear it, if you want to share. Something in his voice, the genuine interest, the lack of judgment made Eva look up. His eyes held only warmth and curiosity. Before she knew it, words were spilling out of her, words she rarely shared with anyone. I grew up in a small town. In New Mexico, my father left when I was 5. My mother, she tried her best, but she had her own problems. By the time I was 16, I was mostly taking care of myself anyway, so I decided to leave. Got a job on a farm, learned the work, moved on when the season ended. Been doing the same ever since. No place ever felt like home, Henry asked softly. Eva shook her head. No reason to stay anywhere. No one ever really noticed me enough to ask me to stay. Henry's eyes held hers. I notice you, Eva. The words were simple, but they hit Eva like a physical force. She looked away, unable to handle the intensity of his gaze. You don't know me, she whispered. I'd like to, Henry replied, if you'd let me. Before Eva could respond, a loud bang came from outside as something hit the side of the house. Henry jumped up. That's probably the shutters on the west side. They always come loose in storms. He grabbed a raincoat from a hook by the door. I'll be right back. Eva sat alone in the warm kitchen, her thoughts swirling like the storm outside. Henry noticed her. Henry wanted to know her. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Getting close to someone meant giving them the power to hurt you. Eva had learned that lesson too many times. By the time Henry returned, soaking wet despite the raincoat, Eva had composed herself. They spent the next hour talking about safer topics: the farm, the upcoming harvest, the small town nearby. Eva found herself laughing at Henry's stories about growing up on Briarwood, about his eccentric grandfather who had built the farm from nothing, about his sister who now lived in the city but came back every Christmas. When the rain finally stopped, Eva knew it was time to go back to the bunkhouse. Henry insisted on walking her, even though she assured him she would be fine. The paths get muddy and slippery after rain, he explained, grabbing a flashlight. Besides, I want to make sure you get back safely. They walked in comfortable silence, the only sound the squelch of mud under their boots and the dripping of water from the trees above. When they reached the bunkhouse, Eva turned to thank him. I had a nice time today, she said, surprising herself with her honesty. So did I, Henry replied. His eyes searched her face in the dim light. Maybe we could do it again sometime, without waiting for a rainstorm. Eva hesitated. Everything in her experience told her to keep her distance, to not get involved with an employer, to stay invisible. But another part of her, a part she had buried long ago, wanted to say yes. I should get inside, she said instead. Early start tomorrow. Disappointment flickered across Henry's face, but he nodded. Of course. Good night, Eva. Good night, Henry. As she closed the door behind her, Eva leaned against it, her heart pounding. For the first time in years, someone had seen past her carefully constructed walls, and for the first time in years, she wasn't sure if that was a bad thing. The next morning at breakfast, Eva kept her head down, focusing on her bowl of oatmeal. She could feel Henry's eyes on her from where he stood talking to the crew leader, but she didn't look up. Last night had been a mistake. Getting close to anyone, especially someone like Henry, could only lead to heartache. Eva, she looked up to find Lisa, one of the few female workers, standing beside her. The boss wants to see you, Lisa said, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Said to meet him by the herb garden after breakfast. Eva's stomach tightened. Did he say why? Lisa shook her head. Nope, but he seemed, I don't know, nervous. Which, it is weird for him. After breakfast, Eva walked slowly to the herb garden, her mind racing with possibilities. Was he going to fire her for being too familiar yesterday? Had she crossed a line she wasn't aware of? Henry was waiting, his back to her as he examined one of the rosemary bushes. He turned when he heard her approach, a smile lighting up his face. Eva, good morning, he said. Thank you for coming. Is something wrong? Eva asked, her voice small. Henry's smile faltered. Wrong? No, nothing's wrong. I wanted to ask if you'd be interested in taking charge of the herb garden. What? Eva stared at him in surprise. You have a gift with plants, especially these herbs. The restaurants we supply have commented on how much better the quality has been since you started harvesting them. I thought maybe you'd like to make it your special project. It would mean a slight raise, of course. Eva blinked, trying to process his words. But I'm just a seasonal worker. I'll be gone after the harvest. Something flashed in Henry's eyes, disappointment. Sadness. You don't have to leave, you know. Briarwood needs good workers year-round. The implication hung in the air between them. He was offering her a reason to stay, a place to belong. I don't know what to say, Eva admitted. Say yes, Henry said simply. To the herbs at least. The rest, Well, we can figure that out later. Eva looked at the garden, then back at Henry's hopeful face. Yes, she said finally. I'd like that. Henry's smile returned, brighter than before. Great, we can start planning right away. I was thinking we could expand the garden, maybe add some new varieties for next season. As he talked enthusiastically about his ideas, Eva found herself smiling too. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she was thinking about the future, not just surviving from day to day, but actually building something. And even more surprisingly, she was thinking about sharing that future with someone else. Maybe, just maybe, Briarwood Acres could become more than just another stop on an endless journey. Maybe it could become something she'd never had before, home. But as she walked back to the fields later, doubt crept in. She'd been hurt before by hoping for too much, by trusting too easily, by believing that someone could actually care about the real Eva, not just what she could do for them. She resolved to be careful, to keep her walls up at least a little longer. After all, the harvest season still had weeks to go. There was plenty of time to see if Henry Blake was really different from everyone else who had passed through her life. Plenty of time to see if being noticed, truly seen, was a blessing or just another way to get her heart broken too. Weeks had passed since Eva took charge of the herb garden, and the change in her was noticeable to everyone at Briarwood Acres. She still kept to herself, but there was a new confidence in her step, a quiet pride in the way she tended to her plants. You've worked miracles with those herbs, Henry said one afternoon as he brought her a cold glass of lemonade. The summer heat was at its peak, and Eva had been working in the garden since dawn. They just needed someone to care for them properly, she replied, accepting the drink gratefully. Plants are easy that way. They respond to attention. So do people, Henry said softly, his eyes never leaving her face. Eva looked away, still uncomfortable with his direct gaze. Every day, Henry found some reason to visit the herb garden, to bring her something, to ask her opinion. And every day, she felt her carefully built walls crumbling a little more. The basil is ready for harvesting, she said, changing the subject. And the restaurant in town asked for extra rosemary this week. Henry nodded, allowing the shift in conversation. Whatever you think is best, you're the expert now. As he walked away, Eva found herself watching him go, admiring the confident set of his shoulders, the easy way he moved. She quickly looked down when one of the other workers passed by, not wanting anyone to notice her interest, but someone had. Lisa approached her later that day as Eva was sorting herbs in the small shed that had become her workspace. So, you and the boss, huh? Lisa said, leaning against the doorframe with a knowing smile. What? No, Eva said quickly, focusing intently on the bundles of time in front of her. There's nothing between us, Lisa laughed. Sure, honey, and I'm the Queen of England. Everyone can see the way he looks at you, and the way you look at him when you think no one's watching. Eva's hand stilled. It's not like that. He's just being kind because I'm good with the herbs. Keep telling yourself that, Lisa said, pushing off from the doorframe. But take some advice from someone who's been around longer than you. Henry Blake is one of the good ones, and good ones don't come along often in this life. After Lisa left, Eva sat alone in the shed, her mind racing. Was it really that obvious? And if everyone could see it, what were they saying? In her experience, being the center of attention, especially as a woman who caught the boss's eye, never ended well. That evening, Eva was the last one in the dining hall. She'd purposely waited until most of the other workers had finished their dinner, not wanting to face their curious glances or knowing smiles. As she was cleaning her plate, Henry walked in looking surprised to find her there. "Eva, I was just looking for you," he said, walking over to her table. "I wanted to ask if you'd join me for dinner tomorrow night." "In town?" Eva froze. "In town, yes, there's a new restaurant that opened. They're interested in buying our herbs, and I thought, since you're in charge of the garden now, you should be part of the discussion." "Oh," Eva said, relief and disappointment mixing strangely in her chest. "A business dinner?" Henry hesitated, then sat down across from her. "Not exactly. I mean, yes, we'll talk business, but I'd also just like to take you to dinner, just the two of us." Eva stared at him, her heart pounding like a date. "Yes," Henry said simply. "Like a date." No one had ever asked Eva on a proper date before. There had been men, of course, casual encounters that never lasted beyond the harvest season, relationships that were more about convenience than connection, but never someone like Henry, someone who looked at her like she was special, who seemed to actually care about her thoughts and feelings. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Henry's face fell. "May I ask why?" Eva looked down at her hands. "You're my boss. People are already talking, and I'm leaving after the harvest anyway." "You don't have to leave," Henry said, reaching across the table as if to take her hand, then stopping himself. "And as for being your boss, Eva, I like you a lot, and I hope you might feel something for me too. Isn't that worth exploring?" Eva finally looked up at him. "Why me, Henry? There are plenty of women in town who would love to date the handsome owner of Briarwood Acres. Women with better backgrounds, better prospects. Women who don't come with as much baggage." Henry's expression softened. "Because none of them are you, Eva. None of them have your strength, your gentleness with the plants, your quiet determination. None of them hum that beautiful melody when they think no one's listening." Eva's throat tightened with emotion. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. No one had ever really seen her. "One dinner," Henry said. "Just give me one evening. If you're still sure you want to keep things strictly professional after that, I'll respect your decision." Eva knew she should say no. Letting Henry in, even a little, meant risking a pain far worse than any she'd experienced before. But, looking into his hopeful eyes, she found herself nodding. "One dinner," she agreed. Henry's smile was like the sun, breaking through clouds. "Tomorrow at 7. I'll pick you up at the bunkhouse." As he left, a spring in his step, Eva wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life, for possibly the best decision. The next day passed in a blur of nervousness for Eva. She had nothing appropriate to wear for a dinner in town, and the thought of sitting across from Henry in a fancy restaurant made her stomach twist with anxiety. Around noon, a package arrived for her at the herb shed. Inside was a simple but pretty blue dress with a note that read, "Thought you might need this. No pressure, it's just a dress. See you tonight." Eva held the dress against herself, touched by his thoughtfulness and relieved that it wasn't anything too fancy or revealing. It was perfect, simple, but nice enough for dinner in town. At 7 o'clock sharp, Henry's truck pulled up outside the bunkhouse. Eva had done her best with her appearance, wearing the blue dress and putting her hair up in a neat bun. She'd even borrowed a touch of mascara and lip gloss from Lisa, who had been thrilled about the date. "Look at you," Henry said when she came down the steps, his voice full of admiration. "You're beautiful, Eva." Eva blushed, unused to such direct compliments. "Thank you for the dress. You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," Henry said, opening the passenger door of his truck for her. "Besides, my sister helped pick it out. She has much better taste than I do." "Your sister knows about me?" Eva asked as they drove toward town. Henry glanced at her, a smile playing at his lips. "I may have mentioned you once or twice, or a dozen times. She's pretty eager to meet you, actually." The restaurant was nicer than Eva had expected, not extravagantly fancy, but certainly the kind of place she'd never have gone to on her own. They were shown to a quiet table near a window, and Eva was relieved to see that the other diners were dressed similarly to them. Nothing too formal or intimidating. After they ordered, an awkward silence fell between them. Outside of work, Eva realized they had little practice in just being together. "So," Henry said finally, "tell me something I don't know about you yet." Eva looked at him in surprise. "Like what?" "Anything. Your favorite color. The first place you worked. A secret dream you've never told anyone." Eva thought for a moment. "My favorite color is green, dark green, like pine trees. The first place I worked was a tomato farm in Arizona. And my secret dream," she hesitated, then said softly, "I've always wanted a garden of my own, not just to work in, but to actually own. A place where I could grow things and know that still be there next season." Henry's face lit up. "That's a good dream, and not an impossible one. What about you?" Eva asked, wanting to shift the focus away from herself. "What does Henry Blake dream about when no one's looking?" A shadow passed over Henry's face. lately not being alone anymore. The raw honesty in his voice caught Eva off guard. Before she could respond, their food arrived, momentarily breaking the intensity of the moment. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily. Henry told her about his childhood on the farm, about his parents who had died in a car accident when he was 20, about taking over Briarwood and the struggles and joys of the past 10 years. Eva found herself opening up to sharing stories she'd never told anyone about her alcoholic mother, about the teacher who had encouraged her love of plants, about the small kindnesses that had helped her survive on her own. By the time dessert arrived, a slice of apple pie they agreed to share, Eva felt more comfortable with Henry than she'd ever felt with anyone. There was something about him that made her feel safe, that made her want to let down her guard. "Can I ask you something personal?" Henry said as they finished the pie. Eva nodded, though a flicker of apprehension ran through her. "Why do you keep running? What are you afraid of?" Eva stared at him, caught off guard by the directness of his question. "I'm not running," she said. Automatically, Henry's eyes were gentle but unwavering. "You move from place to place, never putting down roots, never letting anyone get close. That looks like running to me." Eva was silent for a long moment, turning her coffee cup in slow circles. "When you stay in one place too long," she finally said, "people start to expect things from you. They start to think they know you, that they can predict what you'll do. And then when you disappoint them," she shook her head, "it's easier to keep moving, to be nobody's disappointment." "Eva," Henry said softly, reaching across the table to cover her hand with his, "you could never disappoint me." She looked up at him, her eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. "You don't know that." "No, I don't," he admitted. "But I'd like the chance to find out. I'd like you to stay long enough to prove me right or wrong." The drive back to Briarwood was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the bunkhouse, Henry walked her to the door. "Thank you for tonight," Eva said, suddenly shy again. "I had a nice time, nice enough to do it again." "Sometime?" Henry asked, a hopeful note in his voice. Eva looked up at him in the moonlight, at his kind eyes and gentle smile. Despite all her fears, despite all her instincts telling her to keep her distance, she found herself nodding. "Yes," she said softly, "I'd like that." Henry's smile widened. Slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, he leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her cheek. "Good night, Eva," he whispered. "Good night, Henry," she replied, her skin tingling where his lips had touched. As she watched him walk back to his truck, Eva felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. For the first time in her life, she was letting someone see the real her. And for the first time, she was considering staying in one place even after the harvest ended. It was terrifying and wonderful. Over the next few weeks, Eva and Henry fell into a pattern. During the day, they maintained a professional relationship, with Eva focusing on her herbs and Henry overseeing the wheat harvest. But in the evenings, they would often meet, sometimes for dinner in town, sometimes for a simple walk around the property, sometimes just sitting on Henry's porch watching the sunset. Eva found herself laughing more, talking more, feeling more than she had in years. And with each passing day, the thought of leaving Briarwood became more painful. The other workers noticed the change in her, of course. Some, like Lisa, were genuinely happy for her. Others were more skeptical. "Don't get too comfortable," warned Miguel, an older worker who had been coming to Briarwood for years. "Farm owners and farm workers, it never works out. Trust me." But Eva found it harder and harder to listen to such warnings. Henry was different. He treated her with respect, never pushed her boundaries, seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and feelings. For the first time, Eva began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved something good in her life. Then came the storm. It was early September, and the weather had been unusually hot and dry. Everyone knew a big storm was coming. It had been all over the news for days, but no one expected it to hit as hard as it did. The rain started in the afternoon, a steady downpour that quickly turned the dusty farm roads to mud. By evening, it had become a deluge, with howling winds that bent the remaining wheat stalks almost to the ground. Eva was in the herb shed, frantically trying to secure the more delicate plants, when Henry burst in, soaking wet despite his raincoat. "Eva, you need to come to the farmhouse now," he said, his voice urgent. "The creek's rising fast. The bunkhouse might flood." Eva looked at him in alarm. "What about the others?" Already moved them to the town shelter. "You're the last one. I couldn't find you earlier." Together they rushed through the rain toward Henry's truck. The wind was so strong that Eva felt it might knock her over if not for Henry's steadying hand on her arm. They were halfway to the truck when a loud crack split the air. Look out," Henry shouted, pushing Eva forward just as a large branch crashed down where they had been standing seconds before. They made it to the truck, both breathing hard from the close call. As Henry drove carefully through the storm toward the farmhouse, Eva looked out at the farm. The wheat fields were a mess of bent and broken stalks, and her herb garden, her pride and joy these past weeks, was being pounded mercilessly by the rain. "The crops," she said, her voice tight with distress. "Henry, they're being destroyed." Henry's Hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Crops can be replanted, he said, his voice grim. People can't be replaced. That's all I care about right now. Asterisk. When they reached the farmhouse, they were both drenched despite the short dash from the truck to the porch. Inside, Henry quickly brought Eva towels and dry clothes, the same ones she had borrowed during the last rainstorm, now neatly washed and folded. Asterisk. You can change in the bathroom, he said, running a hand through his wet hair. I need to check the weather reports and call the town shelter to make sure everyone made it. Asterisk. While Henry made his calls, Eva changed into the dry clothes and then wandered into the kitchen. Without thinking, she filled the kettle and put it on the stove, then began searching the cupboards for tea or hot chocolate. It felt strangely natural, moving around Henry's kitchen like this. Asterisk. When Henry joined her, his face was drawn with worry. It's going to get worse before it gets better, he said. The creek's already over its banks in some places. The road to town is flooded. Asterisk. So we're stuck here? Eva asked, pouring hot water into 2 mugs. Asterisk. Henry nodded. Looks that way. At least until morning, probably longer. Asterisk. They sat at the kitchen table, sipping their tea and listening to the storm rage outside. Eva couldn't help thinking about her herbs, about all the work she'd put into the garden that was now being washed away. Asterisk. I'm sorry about your garden, Henry said softly, as if reading her thoughts. We'll rebuild it better than before. Asterisk. Eva looked at him. Asterisk. If you stay, Henry said, meeting her gaze. Eva, I know the harvest is almost over, and normally you'd be moving on, but I don't want you to go. Asterisk. Eva's heart pounded in her chest. What are you saying, Henry? Asterisk. Henry reached across the table and took her hand. I'm saying I want you to stay at Briarwood, not just as a worker, as whatever you want to be. Partner in the herd business. Friend, he paused, then added, softly, more than friends, if you want that too. Asterisk. Eva stared at him, 1,000 emotions swirling inside her. Fear, hope, disbelief, longing. Asterisk. I am not the staying kind, she whispered, even as her heart rebelled against her words. Asterisk. You could be, Henry said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. With the right reason to stay. Asterisk. Before Eva could respond, a deafening crash came from outside, followed by the sound of breaking glass. They both jumped up and ran to the window. A tree had fallen, one of its branches smashing through the window of Henry's office. Asterisk. Stay here, Henry said, grabbing a flashlight. I need to secure that before the whole house gets soaked. Asterisk. I'm coming with you, Eva insisted, following him down the hallway. Asterisk. The office was a mess of broken glass, rain, and leaves. Together, they worked quickly to move important papers away from the water, then covered the broken window with a piece of plywood Henry had in the garage. By the time they finished, they were both wet again from the rain that had poured in. Asterisk. That should hold until morning, Henry said, surveying their work. He turned to Eva, his expression softening. Thank you for helping. Asterisk. Of course, Eva said. That's what ... friends do. Asterisk. Henry stepped closer to her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him despite their damp clothes. Is that what we are, Eva, just friends? Asterisk. Eva looked up into his eyes. At the question there, the hope and uncertainty that mirrored her own feelings. In that moment, with the storm raging outside and her heart pounding inside, all her careful walls, all her reasons for keeping people at a distance, seemed to crumble. Asterisk. No, she whispered. We're more than that. We have been for a while now. Asterisk. Henry's hand came up to gently cup her cheek. Eva, he said, her name like a prayer on his lips. I've been falling in love with you since the day you arrived. I just didn't want to scare you away by saying it. Asterisk. The words hit Eva like a physical force. Love, no one had ever loved her before, not the way Henry meant it. Not with this gentle intensity, this patient devotion. Asterisk. I don't know how to do this, she admitted, her voice trembling. I don't know how to stay in one place, how to let someone care about me, how to love someone back. Asterisk. We'll figure it out together, Henry said, his thumb gently wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. One day at a time. Asterisk. And then he was kissing her, softly at first, then with growing passion as Eva responded, her arms sliding around his neck, her body pressing closer to his. It felt like coming home, a home she'd never had but had always been searching for. Asterisk. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Henry rested his forehead against hers. Stay, Eva, he whispered. Stay with me. Asterisk. Eva closed her eyes, letting herself imagine a life here at Briarwood with Henry, with a garden of her own, with a place to belong. It was everything she'd ever wanted and everything that terrified her. Asterisk. I'll think about it, she promised, though in her heart, she was already beginning to answer yes. Asterisk. Outside. The storm continued to rage, but inside the farmhouse, in Henry's arms. Eva had never felt more sheltered, more seen, more valued. For the first time in her life, the thought of staying in one place didn't feel like a trap, it felt like freedom. Asterisk, asterisk, like the beginning of something, rather than an end. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Morning brought a temporary lull in the storm. Eva stood on Henry's porch, surveying the damage. The farm was a mess, fallen branches everywhere, the wheat fields flattened in places, debris scattered across the property. Her herb garden was barely visible under a layer of mud and torn leaves. Asterisk, asterisk. Henry joined her, handing her a mug of coffee. It looks worse than it is, he said. The wheat was almost all harvested anyway, and the herbs ... He put an arm around her shoulders. We can replant together. Asterisk, asterisk. Eva leaned into him, finding comfort in his solid presence. I've never stayed to see something rebuilt before, she admitted. I've always been gone by the time the damage was fixed. Asterisk, asterisk. Henry pressed a kiss to the top of her head. First time for everything. Asterisk, asterisk. They spent the morning checking on the property, assessing the damage, making plans for repairs. The road to town was still flooded, so they couldn't check on the other workers yet, but Henry had spoken to the shelter manager by phone and confirmed everyone was safe. Asterisk, asterisk. By afternoon, the rain had started again, though not as heavily as before. They returned to the farmhouse, muddy and tired, but pleased with what they'd accomplished. Asterisk, asterisk. I should try to save what I can from the herb garden, Eva said as they warmed up in the kitchen. Some of the hardier plants might survive if I can get to them soon. Asterisk, asterisk. Tomorrow, Henry said firmly. When it's safer. Right now, you need to rest and get warm. Asterisk, asterisk. As they sat together on Henry's couch that evening, watching the rain through the window, Eva felt a strange sense of peace. Despite the destruction outside, despite the uncertainty of what would happen when the storm finally passed, she felt content, happy even. Asterisk, asterisk. What are you thinking about? Henry asked, his fingers gently combing through her hair. Asterisk, asterisk. Eva smiled up at him. That this is nice being here, with you, even with the storm destroying everything outside. Asterisk, asterisk. Henry's eyes softened. Does that mean you're considering my offer to stay? Asterisk, asterisk. Eva took a deep breath. Yes, she said finally. I'm considering it. Seriously considering it. Asterisk, asterisk. Henry's smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. He leaned down to kiss her, a kiss full of promise and hope and possibility. Asterisk, asterisk. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside, Eva Morales, who had spent her life being overlooked, being invisible, being nobody's priority, finally knew what it felt like to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. Asterisk, asterisk. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved it all. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. 3 days after the storm, the roads to town finally cleared enough for travel. The damage to Briarwood Acres was extensive but not catastrophic. Most of the wheat had already been harvested before the storm hit, and while Ava's herb garden had suffered, Henry assured her it could be rebuilt. Asterisk, asterisk. Eva had spent those 3 days with Henry in the farmhouse, helping to clean up what they could around the property and sharing quiet evenings together. It felt surprisingly natural, waking up in Henry's guest room, making breakfast together, working side by side throughout the day. For someone who had spent her life avoiding attachments, Eva found herself settling into a rhythm with Henry that felt both new and somehow familiar, like a song she'd always known but never sung aloud. I'm heading into town to check on everyone at the shelter, Henry said over breakfast on the 4th day. Do you want to come with me? Eva hesitated. Being with Henry, just the two of them on the farm, had been like living in a bubble safe, protected from the outside world and other people's judgments. Going into town meant facing reality again. I should stay and try to salvage what I can from the herb garden, she said, looking down at her coffee. Henry reached across the table and gently tilted her chin up, making her meet his eyes. You're worried about what people will think, aren't you, about you staying here with me? Eva sighed. He could read her too well now. Small towns talk. Henry and farm workers gossip even more. I've been the subject of rumors before and it never ends well. Let them talk, Henry said, his voice gentle but firm. We know the truth, and the truth is that I care about you, Eva, a lot. I'm not ashamed of that. Eva looked into his earnest eyes and felt her resolve weakening. Okay, she said finally. I'll come with you. The drive to town was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. As they approached the community center that had been turned into a temporary shelter, Eva felt her anxiety rising. Would the other workers look at her differently now? Would they assume things about her and Henry that weren't true? Or worse, things that were becoming true but were still too new, too fragile to be exposed to others' scrutiny? The community center was bustling with activity. Most of the seasonal workers were still there, along with other townspeople whose homes had been damaged in the storm. When Eva and Henry walked in together, several heads turned in their direction, and he felt herself shrinking back, instinctively trying to become invisible again. Henry seemed to sense her discomfort. He didn't touch her or do anything that might fuel gossip, but he stayed close, a steady presence at her side as they moved through the room, checking on workers and talking with town officials. Lisa spotted them and hurried over, a knowing smile on her face. "Well, will you two survive the storm together, huh?" "The farmhouse was safer than the bunkhouse," Henry said smoothly. "How are things here? Everyone okay?" "We're fine," Lisa said, her eyes darting between them. "Bored out of our minds, but fine. The real question is, when can we get back to work? Some of us have other jobs lined up after the harvest." "That's actually what I came to talk about," Henry said, his voice becoming more businesslike. "The storm did significant damage to what was left of the wheat fields. There's not much harvesting left to do." A murmur ran through the workers who had gathered around them. For seasonal workers, an early end to a job meant loss of income. "I'll pay everyone through the end of the month," Henry continued. "That's what you all signed on for. But the work itself will be different, cleanup and repairs instead of harvesting." The workers looked relieved, though some still seemed concerned. "What about after that?" asked Miguel, the older worker who had warned Eva about getting too close to Henry. "Most of us were counting on that final paycheck before winter." Henry nodded, understanding their worry. "I know, and I'm sorry about that. I wish I could keep everyone on longer, but with the damage to the crops, I just can't afford it." Eva watched the disappointment spread across the faces of the workers. These were people like her drifters in a way, moving from job to job, harvest to harvest, always one bad season away from real trouble. She had been one of them just a few weeks ago, before Henry had noticed her, before the herb garden, before everything changed. "What about the herb garden?" she asked suddenly, surprising herself by speaking up. "It was damaged but not destroyed. If we could rebuild it quickly, maybe expand it, we could supply more restaurants, maybe even start selling at the farmer's market in the next county." Henry looked at her with surprise and growing excitement. "That's not a bad idea. With the wheat fields damaged, we could convert some of that land to herbs and other produce for the fall and winter markets. That would take more workers." He continued, warming to the idea. "Not as many as the harvest, but more than just you and me." The workers were listening now, hope replacing disappointment on some faces. "It wouldn't be full time for everyone," Henry cautioned, "but maybe we could keep on 4 or 5 people through the winter." "I know herbs," Lisa said immediately. Where grandmother was always growing things for tea and medicine." "I can build whatever structures you need," offered Miguel. "Greenhouses, raised beds, whatever." Soon, several workers were volunteering skills and knowledge that could help transform part of Briarwood from a wheat farm to a more diverse operation. Eva found herself at the center of the planning, drawing on her experience from other farms, suggesting crops that would do well in the local climate during fall and winter. Throughout it all, Henry watched her with a mixture of pride and something deeper, something that made Ava's cheeks warm whenever their eyes met. He was seeing her take charge, use her knowledge, step out of the shadows she'd hidden in for so long, and he was clearly thrilled by it. By the time they left the shelter, a new plan was taking shape. Henry would keep on 5 workers besides Eva, Lisa, Miguel, and 3 others who had relevant skills. They would begin rebuilding and expanding the herb garden immediately, with an eye toward developing a year-round produce operation alongside the wheat farming. "You were amazing in there," Henry said as they drove back to the farm. "I've never seen you so confident, so willing to be seen." Eva looked out the window, a small smile on her lips. "It felt good," she admitted, "to use what I know, to help people." "Is that what changed your mind about staying?" Henry asked, glancing at her. "The chance to build something." Eva turned to look at him. "That's part of it," she said softly, "but not the main reason." Henry's smile was tender. "And what's the main reason?" "You know why," Eva said, suddenly shy again. "It's you, Henry. You're the reason I want to stay." Henry reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm glad," he said simply, "because I don't want to imagine Briarwood without you anymore." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Eva, Henry, and the 5 remaining workers threw themselves into rebuilding the herb garden and preparing new plots for fall crops. It was hard work, but satisfying watching something new and hopeful rise from the storm's destruction. Eva found herself flourishing in her new role. With Henry's encouragement, she took the lead on the herb garden expansion, making decisions, teaching the others what she knew, planning for the future, a future at Briarwood, a future with Henry. They were careful at first, keeping their growing relationship private when the other workers were around. But on a small farm, with people living and working in close quarters, privacy was hard to maintain. Soon it was an open secret that Eva and Henry were more than just boss and employee. To Eva's surprise, the reactions were mostly positive. Lisa was openly delighted, telling Eva she deserved some happiness after always looking so sad. Miguel, despite his earlier warnings, grudgingly admitted that Henry seemed to be serious about her, not just playing around. The others accepted it with knowing smiles or simple indifference. One evening, as Eva and Henry sat on his porch watching the sunset, he turned to her with a serious expression. "Eva, there's something I need to ask you." Eva felt a flutter of nervous anticipation. They had been growing closer every day, but neither had put a label on what they were to each other. What is it? The bunkhouse repairs are almost finished. The others will be moving back in tomorrow. Eva nodded. The bunkhouse had suffered water damage during the storm, and all the remaining workers had been staying at the community center while repairs were made. I was wondering, Henry continued, his voice slightly uncertain, where you want to stay. You're welcome to move back to the bunkhouse with the others, of course, but he took a deep breath. I'd like you to stay here, with me, in the farmhouse. Eva stared at him, processing his words. Living together officially openly was a big step, especially in a small farming community where traditional values still held strong. What exactly are you asking, Henry? She said, needing to be clear. Henry took her hands in his. I'm asking you to move in with me, Eva, not as my employee or even just my girlfriend, but as my partner. In everything: the farm, the herb business, life. He smiled slightly. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months, but when you know something's right, why wait? Eva felt tears prick her eyes. People will talk, she whispered. Let them, Henry said firmly. We're not doing anything wrong. We're two adults who care about each other, who want to build something together. His eyes searched hers. Unless you're not ready. If you need more time, I understand. Eva thought about all the years she'd spent alone, moving from place to place, never letting anyone close enough to hurt her. She thought about how different these past weeks with Henry had been, how seen she felt, how valued, how loved. I'm ready, she said, her voice stronger than she expected. I want to stay with you, Henry, here in the farmhouse. As your partner. Henry's face lit up with joy. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache in the best possible way. You've made me the happiest man in the county, he murmured against her lips. Eva laughed softly. The bar can't be very high in a county this small. Henry chuckled, then grew serious again. I love you, Eva Morales. I think I've loved you since I first saw you in my wheat field, working so carefully, so precisely, trying so hard not to be noticed. The words sent a wave of warmth through Eva's body. I love you too, she whispered, saying the words for the first time in her adult life and meaning them completely. I never thought I'd say that to anyone. I never thought I'd stay in a place long enough to feel this way. They stayed on the porch until the stars came out, talking about their plans for Briarwood, for the herb business, for their life together. For the first time, Eva allowed herself to think of the future not as something to fear, but as something to look forward to build toward with hope and purpose. The next morning, Eva went to the bunkhouse to collect her few belongings. Lisa was there packing her own things to move back from the shelter. So, Lisa said with a knowing smile, the rumor is you're not coming back to the bunkhouse. Eva paused in folding a shirt. News travels fast. Small farm, Lisa shrugged. No secrets here. She sat on her bed, watching Eva pack. Are you happy, Eva? Really happy? Eva looked up, surprised by the serious question. Yes, she said after a moment. Happier than I've ever been. Lisa nodded, satisfied. Good, because if he ever hurts you, just remember I know which herbs are poisonous. She winked to show she was joking mostly. Eva laughed, appreciating the show of friendship. As she continued packing, she realized how different this was from all the other times she'd packed her belongings. Usually she was leaving, moving on to the next job, the next temporary home. This time she was moving towards something, someone, a future that for once didn't terrify her. When she returned to the farmhouse, her new home, Henry was on the phone in the kitchen. From his serious expression and the tension in his shoulders, Eva could tell something was wrong. She set her bag down by the door and waited until he finished the call. What is it? She asked as he hung up. Henry ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of stress. That was my sister Caroline. She's coming to visit today. Today, Eva echoed, feeling a rush of anxiety. But the farm is still a mess from the storm, and I just moved in, and it's not about the farm, Henry interrupted gently. She's coming because of us. Apparently, one of her friends from high school lives in town and told her that I'm shacking up with a seasonal worker. He made quotes around the phrase, his expression darkening with anger. Small towns and their gossip. Eva felt her stomach drop. Your sister disapproves. Henry moved to her quickly, taking her hands. Caroline doesn't know you. Once she meets you, she understand. He kissed her forehead. And even if she doesn't, it doesn't matter. This is my life. Our life, not hers. Eva nodded, but inside, doubt began to creep back in. She'd known there would be challenges to their relationship, the difference in their backgrounds, the fact that she was his employee, the speed with which they'd committed to each other. But somehow, she hadn't prepared herself for the disapproval of Henry's family. When will she arrive? Eva asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Around lunchtime, Henry said. I told her we'd meet her at the diner in town. I thought that might be easier than having her come to the farm right away. Eva nodded, grateful for his thoughtfulness. I should change into something nicer, she said, looking down at her work clothes. You look beautiful as you are, Henry said automatically. Eva gave him a look. Henry, I'm covered in dirt from the garden. I'm meeting your sister for the first time. I want to make a good impression. Henry smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. Okay, fair point. We both should clean up a bit. At noon they were seated in a booth at the town's only diner, waiting for Caroline. Eva kept smoothing her dress, a new one Henry had bought her in town the day before, and checking her reflection in the window. She'd never cared much about her appearance before, but suddenly it seemed critically important. Relax, Henry said, reaching across the table to take her hand. She's going to love you. Before Eva could respond, the diner door opened and a woman walked in who could only be Henry's sister. She had the same warm brown eyes, though hers were currently narrowed in assessment as she spotted them and walked over. Henry, she said, her voice cool as she slid into the booth beside him. And you must be Eva, Caroline, Henry said, an edge to his voice. So nice of you to drop by without any real notice. Caroline ignored the jab, her eyes fixed on Eva. So, you work for my brother, Caroline, Henry warned. It's okay, Eva said quietly. She met Caroline's gaze steadily. Yes, I came to Briarwood as a seasonal worker for the harvest. I'm now partners with Henry in expanding the herb garden into a year-round business. Partners, Caroline repeated, raising an eyebrow. In business and otherwise, from what I hear, yes, Eva said simply. In both, Caroline turned to Henry. Don't you think this is all happening a little fast? You barely know each other. I know everything I need to know, Henry said firmly. Eva is kind, intelligent, hardworking, and she loves Briarwood as much as I do. She sees possibilities for the farm that I never imagined, and I love her. Caroline's eyes widened slightly at the declaration. She looked back at Eva. And you? Do you love my brother, or is Briarwood Acres just a convenient place to settle after years of drifting from farm to farm? Eva felt a flash of anger at the implication. I love Henry, she said, her voice stronger than before. I've spent my life running from attachments, from putting down roots, staying at Briarwood, committing to your brother. That's the hardest, the scariest thing I've ever done. But I'm doing it because what we have is worth facing those fears. Something in Caroline's expression shifted, a hint of respect appearing in her eyes. Henry's been hurt before, she said, her voice slightly less hostile. After our parents died, he threw himself into saving the farm. He didn't have time for relationships. The few women he did date were more interested in the land than in him. I didn't know that, Eva said softly, looking at Henry. Henry shrugged. It's in the past. It doesn't matter now. It matters if history repeats itself, Caroline insisted. She looked at Eva again. The farm isn't doing well financially. Did you know that? The last few harvests have barely broken even. Henry's been dipping into savings to keep things running. Eva glanced at Henry, surprised. He hadn't mentioned financial troubles. I didn't know, she admitted. But that's all the more reason to diversify, to add the herb business, to look at other crops that might be more profitable. And if it doesn't work, Caroline pressed, if the farm fails, will you still be there for my brother, or will you move on to the next job, the next place, like you've always done? The question hit Eva like a physical blow because it echoed her own deepest fear that when things got truly difficult, her instinct to run would overpower her love for Henry. That's enough, Caroline, Henry said sharply. You've made your point. Now either be civil or leave, Caroline sighed, some of the fight going out of her. I'm just worried about you, Henry. This is all so sudden. I appreciate your concern, Henry said, his voice softening. But I'm a grown man, and I know what I want. He reached across the table and took Eva's hand. And what I want is a life with Eva. The simple declaration, made in front of his sister, made Eva's heart swell with emotion. Whatever doubts Caroline's questions had raised, Henry's certainty pushed them back. The rest of the lunch was tense but civil. Caroline asked Eva about her background, her experience with farming, her plans for the herb business. Eva answered, honestly, not hiding her nomadic past or her lack of formal education, but also speaking confidently about her knowledge of herbs and her vision for expanding the business. By the time they finished eating, the atmosphere had thawed slightly. Caroline wasn't exactly warm toward Eva, but the open hostility had faded. Will you come see the farm? Henry asked as they stood to leave. We've made a lot of progress rebuilding after the storm. Caroline hesitated, then nodded. I suppose I should see what all the fuss is about with these herbs everyone keeps mentioning. The drive back to Briarwood was quiet. Eva sat in the back of Henry's truck, leaving the front passenger seat for Caroline. As they bumped along the country roads, Eva wondered what Caroline really thought of her. Did she see Eva as an opportunist, using Henry for security? Or worse, did she see something Eva herself feared, that despite her best intentions, she might not be capable of the kind of commitment Henry deserved? At the farm, Henry gave Caroline a tour, showing her the rebuilding efforts after the storm, the expanded herb garden, the plans for new crops. Eva hung back, letting the siblings have some time together, using the opportunity to check on the seedlings she'd planted the day before. Later, she found them standing at the edge of the herb garden, deep in conversation. From their serious expressions, Eva knew they were talking about her. She hesitated, not wanting to interrupt, but Henry spotted her and waved her over. Eva, he said, putting an arm around her when she reached them. Caroline has something she wants to say too. You. Caroline looked uncomfortable but determined. I owe you an apology, she said directly. I came here with a lot of assumptions. Henry's been telling me about everything you've done for the farm. For him, I was wrong to judge you without knowing you. Eva was taken aback by the unexpected apology. Thank you, she said simply. I understand your concerns. Henry is lucky to have someone who cares about him so much. Caroline's expression softened slightly. He says the same about you. She glanced at her watch. I should get going. I need to be back in the city for a meeting tomorrow morning. You're welcome to stay the night, Henry offered. The guest room is available. I know, Caroline finished with a small smile, but I think you two need some time alone. This has been a lot for everyone. She looked at Eva. I'm still processing all this, but I can see that you make my brother happy. That counts for something. A lot, actually. After Caroline left, promising to visit again soon, Eva and Henry sat on the porch swing, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. I'm sorry about Caroline, Henry said, his arm around Eva's shoulders. She means well, but she can be protective, Eva finished for him. I understand. If I had a brother like you, I'd be protective too. Henry pressed a kiss to her temple. You were amazing, standing your ground, not letting her intimidate you. Eva leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. She asked good questions. She admitted, things I've worried about too. Henry pulled back slightly to look at her. Like what? Eva sighed. Like whether I'll run when things get tough. It's what I've always done, Henry, my whole adult life. But you're still here, Henry pointed out gently. Despite the storm, despite Caroline, despite all the gossip in town, you're still here. Eva looked up at him, at the faith in his eyes, the complete belief he seemed to have in her, in them. I want to be worthy of that trust, she whispered. I want to be the person you think I am. You already are, Henry said simply. You just need to believe it yourself. As the sun set over Briarwood Acres, casting long shadows across the land, they were rebuilding together. Eva allowed herself to believe, just a little more, that maybe Henry was right. Maybe she was stronger than she thought. Maybe she could be the kind of person who stayed, who fought for what mattered, who built something lasting instead of always running away. Maybe, with Henry by her side, she could finally become the person she'd always wanted to be but had been too afraid to try to become. October arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and a new rhythm to life at Briarwood. The expanded herb garden was thriving, with the first sales to local restaurants exceeding even Eva's hopeful projections. Henry had converted part of an old storage building into a small processing area where Eva and Lisa worked on drying herbs and creating the custom blends that were quickly becoming popular with chefs in the region. Eva had settled into life at the farmhouse with surprising ease. She and Henry moved around each other with a comfortable familiarity, as if they'd been together for years rather than months. In the evenings, they would sit at the kitchen table, going over plans for the farm, dreaming up new ideas, occasionally just enjoying the quiet together. It wasn't always perfect. They had disagreements about the farm, about money, about small, everyday things that couples everywhere argued about. But even in their disagreements, Eva found something valuable: the knowledge that she could express her opinions, that Henry would listen, that they could work through problems together without her needing to run away. One crisp morning, Eva was in the herb processing room, carefully packaging dried rosemary for delivery to a restaurant in the next county, when Lisa burst in, her face flushed with excitement. Eva, you'll never guess who just pulled up at the farm. Eva looked up, alarmed by Lisa's tone. Who? Some fancy-looking woman in an expensive car. She asked for Henry, said she's an old friend. Lisa raised her eyebrows suggestively. Very old friend, from the way she was talking. Eva felt a strange twist in her stomach. Henry had never mentioned any old friends who might visit. Where is she now? Henry was showing her around the wheat fields. They looked pretty friendly. Eva tried to ignore the spark of jealousy Lisa's words ignited. I'm sure it's just business, she said, more to herself than to Lisa. Maybe, Lisa said skeptically. But business doesn't usually involve that much laughing and touching someone's arm. Eva set down the herbs she was packaging. I should go say hello, she said, striving for a casual tone. It would be rude not to meet Henry's friend. As she walked toward the wheat fields, Eva spotted them immediately. Henry and a tall, elegant woman with perfectly styled blonde hair. They were standing close together, and the woman was indeed touching Henry's arm as she laughed at something he said. Even from a distance, Eva could see that she was beautiful, polished in a way Eva had never been and never would be. As she approached, Henry looked up and spotted her. A smile broke across his face, and he waved her over. The reaction of a man with something to hide, Eva noted with relief. Eva, he called. Come meet Rebecca. We went to high school together. The blonde woman turned, assessing Eva with cool blue eyes. So you're Eva, she said, her voice cultured and smooth. Henry's been telling me all about you and your herb project. The slight pause before herb project made it sound trivial, like a hobby rather than a business. Eva felt herself bristling but forced a smile. Nice to meet you, Rebecca. What brings you to Briarwood? I was just passing through on my way to the city, Rebecca said with a casual wave of her hand. I heard Henry had taken over the farm after his grandfather passed, and I thought I'd stop by for old time's sake. She smiled at Henry. We used to be quite close. You know, Rebecca's father owned the bank in town, Henry explained to Eva. Our families knew each other well. Daddy still owns the bank, Rebecca corrected, among other things. She looked around the farm with a critical eye. Briarwood has seen better days, hasn't it? That storm really did a number on the place. We're rebuilding, Henry said firmly, and diversifying. Ava's herb business is already showing a profit, and we're expanding into other specialty crops for the winter market. Rebecca raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. How, quaint. She turned to Eva. And you were one of Henry's seasonal workers, I understand, before you became more. The implication was clear, and Eva felt her cheeks burning. Before she could respond, Henry stepped closer to her, putting an arm around her waist. Eva is my partner, he said, his voice leaving no room for misinterpretation. In every sense of the word, the farm is as much hers now as it is mine. Rebecca's smile tightened. How progressive of you, Henry, though I'm not sure your grandfather would approve of you giving away part of the family legacy to someone you've known for a few months. My grandfather would have adored Eva, Henry said firmly. He always said Briarwood needed someone who truly understood growing things, not just the business side of farming. Eva has that gift. Rebecca turned to Eva, her smile not reaching her eyes. Well, aren't you the lucky one? Showing up for a temporary job and ending up with half a farm. Some people have all the luck. Eva felt her old insecurities rushing back, the fear that she didn't belong, that she wasn't good enough, that someone like Henry would eventually realize he'd made a mistake in choosing someone like her. But then she remembered everything they'd built together over the past months, not just their relationship, but the expanded herb garden, the plans for the farm's future, the trust they'd established. She straightened her shoulders and met Rebecca's gaze directly. It's not luck, she said quietly but firmly. It's hard work, knowledge earned over years of farming, and a vision for what Briarwood can become. Henry and I are partners because we share that vision. Henry squeezed her waist gently, pride evident in his expression. Exactly, he said. Now, Rebecca, I'm afraid we have a delivery to prepare for a restaurant in the next county. It was nice seeing you again. Rebecca looked taken aback by the dismissal. Oh, well, I was hoping we might catch up more, for old time's sake, perhaps over dinner. There's a new place in the city I think you'd enjoy, Henry. Another time, perhaps, Henry said politely but firmly. Eva and I have commitments here. After Rebecca left, her sleek car stirring up dust on the farm road, Eva turned to Henry. You didn't have to send her away like that. Yes, I did, Henry said, still watching the car disappear in the distance. Rebecca has always been difficult. We dated briefly in high school, and she's never quite accepted that it didn't work out. She's beautiful, Eva said before she could stop herself. Henry turned to look at her, surprise on his face. Are you jealous? Should I be? Eva asked, hating the insecurity in her voice. Henry's expression softened. He pulled her into his arms, looking down into her eyes. Eva Morales, there is not a woman in this county, this state, or this entire country who could make me look away from you. Rebecca is my past, a small, insignificant part of it. You are my present and my future. As he bent to kiss her, Eva felt the last of her doubts melt away. Whatever challenges they might face, disapproving sisters, judgmental old flames, the ongoing struggles of the farm, they would face them together. And for the first time in her life, Eva truly believed that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly the person she was meant to be with, in Henry's arms, in their home, on the land they were building together. Eva was no longer invisible. She was seen, valued, loved, and not despite her past or her background, but because of the strength and resilience they had helped her develop, and that, she was beginning to understand, was the greatest gift of all. November brought the first real cold snap to Briarwood Acres. Eva woke early one morning to find frost covering the ground, turning the farm into a glittering wonderland. She stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching the sun rise over the fields that had become her home. Home, the word still felt strange, sometimes wonderful, but strange. After so many years of drifting, of never belonging anywhere, she now had a place that was hers, a life that was hers, a love that was hers. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and Henry rested his chin on her shoulder. Beautiful, isn't it? He murmured, his voice still husky with sleep. Eva agreed, leaning back against his solid warmth. I've never stayed in one place long enough to see the seasons change like this. To watch a farm go from summer to fall, to winter. Henry pressed a kiss to her neck. And spring will be even better. Everything coming back to life, new growth everywhere. His arms tightened around her. Our first spring together. Eva turned in his arms, looking up into his face, the face that had become as familiar to her as her own. I love you, she said simply. The words came easily now, a truth she no longer feared admitting. I love you too, Henry replied, bending to kiss her softly. More every day. After breakfast, they bundled up and went out to check on the greenhouses they'd built to extend the growing season for some of the herbs. The expanded herb business had been a success beyond even Ava's hopes. 3 more restaurants in neighboring counties had signed contracts for regular deliveries, and they'd started selling specialty herb blends at the weekend farmers market in town. "We're going to need more space next year," Eva said as they walked through the largest greenhouse, checking the temperature gauges. "Maybe convert that old barn on the north end of the property." Henry nodded, making a note on the small pad he carried. "Good idea. We could divide it half for growing, half for processing and packaging." They worked together seamlessly now, each anticipating the other's thoughts, building on each other's ideas. The farm was still struggling financially. The damage from the storm had been costly, and diversifying took time and investment, but they were making progress. Every week brought a new small victory, a new reason to believe in the future they were creating. As they walked back to the farmhouse, Henry suddenly stopped, taking Eva's hand. "I almost forgot to tell you. I got a call from Caroline yesterday." Eva tensed slightly. Though Henry's sister had become more accepting of their relationship over the past month, there was still an underlying tension whenever they spoke. "What did she want?" "She's coming for Thanksgiving next week and ... Henry hesitated, then continued. "She's bringing someone with her. A man named David. Apparently they've been dating for a few months." Eva raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Your sister has a boyfriend? From the way you talk about her, I thought she was married to her job." Henry chuckled. "So did I. She's never brought anyone home before, so this must be serious." He squeezed Eva's hand. "She specifically asked if you'd be making those herb rolls you sent her the recipe for." Eva felt a warm glow of pleasure. It was a small thing, but the fact that Caroline had asked for something Eva made felt like progress. "Of course, I'll make extra. So you're okay with them coming? I know Thanksgiving is a big deal, and this will be our first one together." And Eva stopped him with a gentle finger to his lips. "Henry, they're family. Of course they should come." She smiled. "Besides, I've never had a real family Thanksgiving before. The more, the merrier." Henry's expression softened. "Have I told you lately how amazing you are?" "Not since breakfast," Eva teased. Henry pulled her close, kissing her deeply despite the cold air around them. "You're amazing, Eva Morales, and I am the luckiest man in the world." The days leading up to Thanksgiving were busy ones at Briarwood. Besides preparing for Carolyn and David's visit, Eva and Henry had holiday orders to fill for the restaurants they supplied. Lisa and Miguel, who had stayed on as permanent employees, helped with the increased workload, but there were still long days of harvesting, processing, and packaging. Eva threw herself into preparations for the holiday meal as well. Though she'd never hosted a Thanksgiving dinner before, she was determined to make it perfect. She spent hours poring over recipes, planning a menu that would showcase the herbs and late fall vegetables from their farm. The night before Thanksgiving, Henry found her in the kitchen at midnight, surrounded by cookbooks and lists. "Eva," he said gently, "come to bed. Everything's going to be fine." Eva looked up at him, her eyes tired but bright with excitement. "I just want it to be perfect, for Caroline to see that I belong here, that we're building something good together." Henry came to her, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "Caroline already knows that. Everyone does." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "But you don't have to prove anything to anyone, least of all to me." Eva rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I know, it's just, I've never had this before, a home, a family gathering. It matters to me." "It matters to me too," Henry said softly. "But what matters most is that we're together." He kissed the top of her head. "Now come to bed. The turkey will still be there in the morning." Thanksgiving Day dawned clear and cold. Eva was up early, putting the turkey in the oven and starting on the side dishes. Henry helped where he could, following her instructions with good-natured obedience, stealing kisses when she wasn't looking, making her laugh when she started to get too stressed. By the time Caroline and David were due to arrive, the farmhouse was filled with delicious smells, and Eva had everything under control. She'd even found time to change from her cooking clothes into a pretty dress, another gift from Henry, who seemed to take joy in buying her things she would never have bought for herself. "You look beautiful," Henry said, coming up behind her, as she checked her appearance one last time in the hallway mirror. "Relax, Caroline's going to love everything." The sound of a car pulling up outside made Eva's heart race with sudden anxiety. This was her first time hosting Henry's family, her first real Thanksgiving in a home of her own. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and followed Henry to the door. Caroline looked different somehow, softer, less intense, her usual city sophistication tempered with a new warmth. The man beside her, David, was tall and lanky, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Henry." "Eva," Caroline said, embracing her brother and then, to Eva's surprise, hugging her as well. "The farm looks wonderful. You've done so much since I was here last." "Thank you," Eva said, genuinely touched by the compliment. "Come in, both of you. Dinner's almost ready." David proved to be a charming addition to their small gathering. He was a professor at the university where Caroline worked as an administrator, and he had a way of drawing everyone into conversation, finding connections, making them all laugh with his stories. To Eva's delight, the meal went perfectly. The turkey was moist, the sides were delicious, and her special herb rolls earned specific praise from Caroline. "These are amazing, Eva," she said, taking a second one. You should package these for your restaurant clients. I've been telling her that, Henry said, giving Eva a proud smile. She's got a gift with herbs that I've never seen before. The whole meal is wonderful, David added sincerely. You've made this farmhouse so warm and inviting. It feels like a real home. Eva felt a glow of happiness at his words. That was exactly what she'd been trying to create. Not just a house, but a home. A place where people felt welcome, where love was visible in every detail. After dinner, as they all sat in the living room with coffee and pie, Carolyn cleared her throat. Actually, David and I have an announcement to make. Henry raised his eyebrows. An announcement. Caroline looked at David, who took her hand, smiling encouragingly. We're engaged, she said, holding out her left hand to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Caroline, Henry exclaimed, jumping up to hug his sister. That's wonderful news. Congratulations. Eva hugged Caroline as well, genuinely happy for her. I'm so glad for you both. When's the wedding? In the spring, Caroline said, her usual composure softened by happiness. April. And Eva, I was hoping you might help with the flowers and herbs for the ceremony. David's mother is a florist, but she knows nothing about herbs, and I love the idea of incorporating them. Eva stared at her, touched beyond words by the request. It wasn't just an acknowledgement of her expertise. It was Caroline's way of including her in the family, of showing that she accepted Eva's place in Henry's life. I'd be honored, she said softly. Later, after Caroline and David had gone to bed in the guest room, Eva and Henry sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold night air, looking at the stars. Today was perfect, Henry said, his arm around Eva, holding her close. You were perfect. Eva smiled, contentment washing over her. It felt right, having them here, making a meal in our home. Our home, Henry repeated, satisfaction in his voice. I love hearing you say that. Eva turned to look at him, at the face she had come to love so deeply. It's true. Briarwood is my home now. The first real home I've ever had. Henry was quiet for a moment, his expression growing serious. Eva, there's something I've been wanting to ask you, something I've been thinking about for a while now. Eva felt her pulse quicken at his tone. What is it? Henry shifted, turning to face her fully. I love you more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. Mine too, Eva whispered, her throat tight with emotion. Henry took her hands in his. When you first came to Briarwood, you were running, always moving, never staying long enough to put down roots. But you stayed. You chose to build something here, with me. Eva nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. I want to build everything with you, Eva. The herb business, the farm, a life, a family someday, if that's what you want to. Henry's voice was steady, his eyes never leaving hers. I want to give you the home you never had, the security you've always deserved. I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how precious you are, how seen, how valued, how loved. Eva's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Henry. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a simple but beautiful ring, a diamond surrounded by tiny emeralds the color of fresh herbs. Eva Morales, Henry said, his voice trembling slightly now. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner in everything, for the rest of our lives? Tears filled Eva's eyes, spilling over to run down her cheeks. All her life, she had been overlooked, passed by, deemed unworthy of real attention. She had learned to be invisible, to expect nothing, to take what little kindness came her way and never asked for more. And then Henry had seen her, really seen her, from that very first day in the wheat field. He had noticed the care she took with her work, heard the songs she hummed when she thought no one was listening, valued the knowledge she'd gathered over years of moving from farm to farm to farm. He had shown her, through countless small acts of kindness and one great act of love, that she was worthy of being seen, of being chosen, of being loved. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking on the word. Yes, Henry, I'll marry you. Henry's face lit up with joy, his hands trembling slightly. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her, which Eva realized it probably had been. I had it designed specially, Henry confirmed, as if reading her thoughts. The emeralds reminded me of your herbs, of how your hands bring life to everything they touch. Eva looked down at the ring, then back up at Henry. It's beautiful, perfect. Henry cupped her face in his hands, his eyes shining with love. You're perfect. For me, for Briarwood, for the life we're building. As he kissed her, Eva felt the last of her old fears dissolving, replaced by a certainty she had never known before. This was right. This was where she belonged. This was the man she was meant to love, the place she was meant to call home, the life she was meant to live. No longer invisible, no longer overlooked, no longer overlooked. Spring came to Briarwood Acres in a riot of color and new life. The herb garden Eva had started the previous summer had expanded across a significant portion of the farm, with several large greenhouses now ensuring year-round production. The business had grown too, with contracts from restaurants across 3 counties and a line of specialty herb products that sold out weekly at the farmers Markets on a perfect April morning with the sun shining and a gentle breeze stirring. The new leaves. Eva stood in the farmhouse bedroom looking at herself in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her was almost unrecognizable from the quiet, withdrawn farmhand who had arrived at Briarwood nearly a year ago. This woman stood tall, confident, her eyes bright with happiness, her simple white dress enhancing her natural beauty. Her dark hair was adorned with tiny white flowers and sprigs of fresh herbs, rosemary for remembrance, mint for virtue, lavender for devotion, sage for wisdom and long life. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Eva, can I come in?" It was Lisa, who had become not just an employee but a true friend over the past months. She was to be Eva's maid of honor today. "Come in," Eva called, turning from the mirror. Lisa entered, already dressed in her pale green bridesmaid dress. She stopped short when she saw Eva, her eyes widening. "Oh, Eva, you look beautiful." Eva smiled, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Thank you. Is everything ready outside?" "Everything's perfect," Lisa assured her. "The garden looks like something from a fairy tale with all those herbs and flowers. Henry's been checking every detail about 100 times." She grinned. "He's as nervous as you are." "I'm not nervous," Eva said, surprised to find it was true. "Not about marrying Henry. That's the one thing in my life I'm completely sure about." Lisa's expression softened. "You two were meant for each other. Everyone can see it." She held out a small box. "This is from Henry. He asked me to give it to you before the ceremony." Eva took the box, opening it carefully. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a small charm, a tiny golden herb leaf, perfect in every detail. "There's a note," Lisa said, pointing to a small folded paper tucked into the box. Eva unfolded it, her heart swelling as she read Henry's familiar handwriting. "Eva, from the moment you arrived at Briarwood, you brought life to this farm and to my heart. Like the herbs you tend so carefully, you have grown roots here strong, deep, and lasting. Today I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt how completely you are seen, how deeply you are valued, how perfectly you are. Loved, yours always." Henrietta pricked Eva's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sadness. She slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, the golden herb catching the sunlight, a perfect symbol of everything she and Henry had built together. "Ready?" Lisa asked gently. Eva nodded, taking a deep breath. "Ready?" The ceremony was held in the herb garden, the place where Eva and Henry's connection had first deepened, where she had begun to find her confidence, where they had started building their shared vision for Briarwood's future. Simple white chairs had been set up in rows, with an aisle lined with potted herbs and spring flowers. It was a small gathering: Henry's sister Caroline and her new husband David, the employees who had become like family, a few neighbors and friends from town, and to Eva's surprise, her former teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had encouraged her love of plants so many years ago. Henry had tracked her down and invited her, knowing how much it would mean to Eva to have someone from her past who had believed in her. Miguel, who had become something of a father figure to both of them, walked Eva down the aisle. As they approached, Eva's eyes found Henry, waiting for her beneath an arch covered in climbing roses and fragrant herbs. His face, when he saw her, lit up with such love and pride that Eva felt her heart might burst with happiness. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They had written their own vows, promises spoken from the heart, witnessed by the people who mattered most to them. When Henry slipped the gold band onto Eva's finger, joining it with her engagement ring, his hands were steady, his eyes never leaving hers. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister said, beaming at them. "You may kiss the bride." Henry took Eva's face in his hands with infinite tenderness. "I love you, Eva Blake," he whispered, using her new name for the first time. "And I love you, Henry Blake," she whispered back. "Always." Their kiss was a promise, a beginning, a sealing of the bond that had grown between them from that first the moment when Henry had noticed the quiet worker in his field, the woman who tried so hard to be invisible but who shone too brightly to be overlooked. The reception was held on the farmhouse lawn, with tables set up under string lights, the spring air filled with music and laughter. Eva and Henry moved among their guests, accepting congratulations, sharing their happiness. Two people so clearly meant for each other that everyone who saw them together couldn't help but smile. As the evening grew late, Henry found Eva standing at the edge of the celebration, looking out over the farm, their farm in the soft twilight. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Blake?" he asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Eva leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of him, the security of his embrace. "About how different everything is from a year ago. How different I am." "You were always extraordinary," Henry said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You just needed someone to notice." Eva turned in his arms, looking up into the face of the man who had changed her life by the simple act of seeing her when no one else did. "You didn't just notice me, Henry. You gave me a place to belong. You helped me believe I was worth being seen." Henry's eyes were tender as he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You always were. I just had the good fortune to be the one who saw it first." He smiled. "And now I get to spend the rest of my life seeing you, knowing you, loving you more each day." "That sounds perfect," Eva whispered, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. Over his shoulder, she could see Briarwood Acres spread out before them, the farmhouse with its welcoming porch, the herb garden she had built with her own hands, the fields where they would grow crops and dreams and a future together, the place where she had arrived as a solitary wanderer and had found, against all expectations, a home. As twilight deepened into night, stars began to appear overhead, bright points of light in the vast darkness. Eva remembered all the nights she had slept under those same stars, alone and adrift, never staying long enough in one place to put down roots, to be known, to be loved. Those days were over now. She had found her place in the world, not just a physical location, but a place in someone's heart. She had found Henry, and he had found her, and together they had created something neither could have built alone: a farm, a business, a marriage, a life. And as Henry led his bride back to their guests, to the celebration of their union, Eva Morales, now Eva Blake, hummed softly under her breath, no longer caring who heard. The tune was the same one she had hummed that day in the herb garden when Henry had first commented on it. The song from her childhood that had been one of her few happy memories, but now it was more than a memory. It was a beginning. The first notes of the melody that would be their life together, sometimes sweet, sometimes challenging, but always played in harmony, to people who had found in each other exactly what they needed, exactly when they needed it. Two hearts, no longer unseen, no longer alone, one love, as enduring as the land they tended together, one future, bright with promise, rich with possibility, rooted in the fertile soil of Briarwood Acres, the place where Eva had finally found her home.